Are you totally overwhelmed by all the roles in BDSM? Like, how do you even begin to figure out where you fit? Or maybe you're thinking, do I even really need a label to enjoy this lifestyle? I get it. I've felt that way too. I'm Alessandra from Submissive, and today we're breaking it all down. So by the end of this episode, you'll not only understand the most common roles, but you'll also feel confident exploring what resonates with you. Let's find your perfect role. Welcome to the Submissive podcast. Before we dive in, I just want to share something that could make this whole process way easier for you. It's my free kink personality quiz, and it helps you discover your unique kinky strengths, and it gives you a personalized plan in just 3 minutes. So whether you're new or experienced, it's your shortcut to finding what feels authentic to you. And you can take it now at domsubliving.com/quiz, and I'll put a link for it in the description too. But why do BDSM roles even matter? Why are we doing a whole episode on this? Well, roles in BDSM, they really just serve as frameworks for understanding all the different types of dynamics that are in the lifestyle, but they can be flexible and they are usually constantly evolving too. So roles aren't really about boxing you in and trying to make you conform. They're more about understanding yourself and how you connect with others. And I'll just tell you a quick story too from when I first started out. So when I first started exploring BDSM, I thought I had to be this perfect submissive, whatever that meant. But I soon realized that finding my role is more about feeling more aligned than the actual labels that go with it. And so once I realized that, I was able to embrace more of these terms and roles. But my dom was the complete opposite. In the beginning, he didn't really want any labels because he felt that they were too limiting for him. So in the beginning, keep an open mind, and you might have to kind of try on different labels and roles, but it's really about just finding what feels best for you. Because what if you could approach BDSM in a way that feels natural for you? What if exploring roles could be freeing and not limiting? So that's what we're going to explore today. So what are BDSM roles? Well, BDSM roles refer to the dynamics people take on within the lifestyle. So you probably heard of the terms like dominant, submissive, but there's other more niche identities too. So things like brat or even primal identities or service oriented. So those are all different roles too. So I really challenge you to think of roles more like tools to help you explore your identity. They're not rules, they're not set in stone, so you don't have to be strict about following them. They're more of like hats that you can put on and off and try on, and maybe you like one more than the other. But there are the core roles that we're going to be talking about. So these are things like dominant, submissive, switch, and then there's those more niche roles, and we'll be getting into all of those. But roles can shift and evolve over time. And that's definitely been the case for me. I kind of like to think of all my different roles and identities as kind of like this pie. Like when you see a pie graph, certain percentages maybe in one area more than the other, but it can switch too, depending on my mood, the season of life I'm in. They've definitely evolved over time. But even though I consider myself a submissive, I like to think of myself as a multifaceted, complex human being. And so my identity as a submissive reflects that too. So let's do a deep dive into some of the most popular roles that you'll come across in the lifestyle. So the first one is dominant roles. And so some examples of these are things like master, owner, daddy dom or mommy dom, a sadist. A lot of these terms can be gendered or they can be gender neutral too. So instead of a daddy or a mommy, we might use a term like caregiver. So you can see here how there's a lot of nuances. So I like to think of dominant as more of this umbrella role, and then you have these more specific roles underneath. And again, it can change over time. But for the dominant roles, the traits that you usually see in these are ones like leadership, a nurturing aspect, a lot of structure and control. But one of the biggest misconceptions I see when it comes to dominant roles is people think it means that they're a bossy person or they're domineering. But a good dominant really leads with care and communication. And a lot of people have actually asked me if I ever identify as a dominant. I don't know what is giving that impression to people. Maybe I just come across that way, but I have tried trying to take on, the lead more or take control more during scenes, and it just has never felt right. It's never gone good, but it did just really teach me a lot about myself and my natural tendencies and how I do feel more comfortable as a submissive. But if you're wondering if you might be in more of these dominant roles, you can ask yourself, does the idea of leading excite me, or does it feel intimidating? And that can kind of guide you to make the right choice for you. And again, it doesn't have to be set in stone, but just kind of play with these different roles. So we talked about dominant roles. So now let's move on to submissive roles. So some examples of these, again, we have submissive as the umbrella term, and then we might have things like brat or little girl, little boy, slave, masochist. And the traits of a submissive tend to be more about wanting to trust their partner, surrender to their partner. There also can be some kind of playfulness or brattiness, and also a service-oriented mind too. But one of the myths I hear about being a submissive is that being a submissive means that you're weak, and it's the complete opposite. A submissive is a very strong individual, and they have so much strength that they're able to give that over to someone else, and they have a desire to be vulnerable. So it doesn't mean that they're a weak person. And for me personally, as a submissive, I find that being in this role just gives me so much more power and so much freedom too. There's just really something beautiful about trusting someone enough to let go, especially during a scene, especially during a hardcore scene or a consensual non-consent scene, where you're pretty much putting your life a lot of the times in this other person's hands. But it can just be so freeing to be able to turn off my mind and not have to worry about every little thing and let someone else take control in my life. And maybe that's true for you. Have you ever felt a sense of relief in letting someone else kind of take the reins in either the bedroom or in your life? So, if so, you might be a submissive. So let's move on to the third main role. So this would be switches. And these are individuals who enjoy both the dominant and submissive roles. And a lot of times it depends on their mood, or it depends on their partner or the situation. So it can kind of go back and forth. Because I know people who love being a dominant at things like play parties, but in their relationships, they may be full on submissive. So it's all about finding balance and doing what feels right for you. But there is a lot of allure about being a switch, because what if you didn't have to choose just one side? Could switching be your happy medium? So that's why the switch role is so appealing to so many kinksters. So we talked about the main core roles of dominant and submissive and switch, but let's get into more of these niche roles that you might come across. So the first one is primal. So these are really focused on instinct and raw energy. So you might have a predator or a prey. And then another niche role is pet play. So this is where you embody traits of different animals like kittens or puppies. I've seen even cows too. So, really, whatever animal fits your type of play. And then there are roles like rope bunny, rope bottom, and rope top. So these are all centered on being tied in rope bondage or tying someone else. Now, these more niche roles might sound unfamiliar or even strange at first, but they're deeply fulfilling for many people, including myself. I consider myself a rope bunny. I love being tied. I love all things rope. And me and my dom have even done scenes around primal aspects too. And those can be incredibly raw and exciting because they're not just the traditional dom sub scenes. There's a lot more wrestling and trying to get away and hitting and pushing and biting. So I don't want you to think that BDSM has to be this traditional dom sub thing where it's just really somber and kind of like this 50 shades of gray type of thing, that you can make it be however you want it to be. So we talked about all of the main roles in BDSM. So how do you discover which one or ones fit you? Well, it's going to take a lot of self-reflection. So ask yourself, what excites me? What feels natural? What challenges me in a good way? And think about your personality too. Are you more of a leader, more of a follower, or are you somewhere in between? So another way to find out what roles fit you is to experiment. So I really encourage you to start small, maybe with different role playing in a different DS dynamic, and maybe doing that for a scene or a few scenes and just trying out different activities, because you don't need to dive head first. Just really take it one step at a time so you can really get a feel for each role. And then another way you can figure it out is just through communication. So if you have a partner, talk about what roles interest you and why. Share about your curiosity and boundaries, or maybe ask them, what role do you see me, taking on really naturally? What do you think is the perfect fit for me? You don't have to go completely along with what they say, but if they're a partner you trust, they may know you better than you know yourself. And if you don't have a partner and you're exploring this solo, some things you can do are journaling or taking quizzes, like my free kink personality quiz. That can be a great starting point. And if you're a member of our Dom Sub training course, you can check out the first module we have there where we go into detail how to discover your role. And you can even post in our members only forum if you're still needing help and support to try to figure out what role or roles suit you best. And that's really why being part of a kink community is so important, because when you're hearing other people's experiences, it can be really eye-opening. So in addition to online forums like the community we have, you can participate in in-person groups like munches and events, because I know when I first attended a munch, I learned about so many different roles that I didn't even know existed, and it was just so eye-opening. So I definitely encourage you to take part in community. But while you're discovering your role, I just want to share some of my biggest tips. So the first one is, you're not locked into one role forever. That roles can evolve as you grow and change. And in fact, I think they kind of should, because again, we're multifaceted human beings. And so as we grow and evolve, it would make sense that our roles are evolving too. And kind of that pie analogy where it's different percentages. I know that has been the case for me, that sometimes because of whatever I have going on in my life, I might swing more as a little girl. Or as I'm getting more and more confident in my roles, maybe I become more as a slave role because I trust my partner. We're at a really good place and I can feel like I can give him that total control. So your role can change and evolve over time. And then my other biggest tip is, you don't have to fit perfectly into a label. Many people mix and match, and that's totally okay. So don't feel like you have to fit into this cookie cutter vision of what a dominant should be or what a submissive can be. You can totally choose the role and switch back and forth, and it can be totally fluid. So again, there's no rules to this. I've met doms and subs who are totally different people, and the different roles can be completely different in how they manifest. So really, again, make it work for you. Because who says you can't create your own unique dynamic? Because besides consent, there really are no rules in BDSM. So as long as you're consenting, as long as your partner is consenting, just do what feels right for you. But if you're feeling curious about where you might fit, definitely take my free kink personality quiz to get you started. And you can take it at domsubliving.com/quiz, and you'll get a personalized plan tailored just for you. And I'll put a link for it in the description as well. And let me know in the comments what role resonates with you the most, or are you still exploring? But thanks for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss more content like this. And remember, your BDSM journey is all about discovering what makes you feel alive and authentic. So until next time, keep embracing your power and pleasure through Dom Subliving.